Actor's gonna act.
So this is interesting, I think. SAG-AFTRA accuses studios of bully tactics as talk suspended. Now, I saw the headline. I thought it was absolutely gold, because what they've come out and they've said negotiations between the AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA have been suspended after SAG-AFTRA presented its most recent proposal on October 11th. After meaningful conversations, it's clear that the gap between the AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA is too great and conversations are no longer moving forward in a productive direction. But what they also said, I don't think it's in here, but they said, and this is why striking is not what you should do all the time, right? Because it can backfire. They said, the SAG-AFTRA was like, well, what you've done is actually give us an offer that's worse than the previous one before we even struck. Yes, that can happen in strikes, guys. You don't accept one deal, and then come back with a counter deal. That is perfectly valid in striking.
You ever seen Empire Strikes Back?
And I'm pretty sure that the
Vader keeps making the deal worse and worse.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that the AMPTP actually said this is our best and final offer.
Yeah.
And so now they come back and they're like, well, you turned down our best offer. Here's our second best offer.
Well, if you can't have us, look, does this mean they're not going back to work yet?
Yes.
No, they're not going back to work.
Because this is exactly what happened. Remember, like, what was it, 3 months ago or not quite 3 months ago, it'd be about a month and a half now, when they hit that point where the papers and the media were all like, oh, they're gonna go back to work. Because yesterday they were talking about how the offer was in and they think they're gonna go back to work and come to a decision, blah, 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 blah. Here's their decision. This is exactly what happened with the writers, too. Only the writers, I don't think they got much. They just only had like a few points that weren't mentioned. The fact that the studios are kind of like going, look, guys, we don't fucking need you. I think they should have done this more with the writers, to be honest with you. If they were going to do this with the actors, then they should have done it with the writers too, because at this point it makes no sense why they did this.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, let's get down to what was actually said, right? So early Thursday morning, SAG-AFTRA shot back at the AMPTP, telling members that the studios walked away from talks with the union and accused them of using bully tactics. The studios intentionally misrepresented to the press the cost of the above proposal, overstating it by 60%. They have done the same thing with AI, claiming to protect performer consent, but continuing to demand consent on the first day of employment for use of a performer's digital replica for an entire cinematic universe or any franchise project. SAG-AFTRA message added, the companies are using the same failed strategy they tried to inflict on the WGA. It fucking worked. It didn't fail. Putting out misleading information in an attempt to fool our members into abandoning our solidarity and putting pressure on our negotiators. But, just like the writers, our members are smarter than that, and it will not be fooled. The writers didn't get a good deal. At all. The writers' deal is garbage, and they're only kicking the can down the road for 3 years. They're going to have the same crap again in 3 years. Their deal is not good. It will lead to significant reductions in writing staff. Actually, it's not a good deal. Writers will lose their jobs. From a writing standpoint, the members of the WGA, that's not a good deal because writers will actually lose jobs. Insane. Anyway,
good deal for the studio.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully a good deal for us, because apparently a bunch of the woke writers are going to get, piss
hopefully.
off. In its message, the MPTP singled out the union's proposal for casts to receive a cut of streaming platform revenue as an untenable economic burden. And it is. Do you know why it is, though, ladies and gents? It's because streaming doesn't make any money. Doesn't make any money at all. That would cost more than $800 million per year. The trade association also referred to numerous remaining open items, but did not explicitly state which ones those might be. When the two parties restarted negotiations October 2nd, they still had yet to come to terms on AI regulations and minimum wage rates, among other issues. Minimum wage rates, for day players and stuff. I think those things are fair. AI and minimum wage rates, I think they're perfectly reasonable to have a stance on. In its missive, the MPTP presented what it said was the studio's latest offer to the Performers Union. Among the offerings, it said it was a success-based residual for high-budget SVOD titles, which is what the Writers Guild of America cinched in its latest negotiations. Also included were issues that SAG-AFTRA has been looking to make headway on for years and increase the pension and health contributions cap between 22 and 33%, and the incorporation of performance capture work in SAG-AFTRA's TV theatrical agreement. The AMPTP said it had offered the same minimum rate increases that it had offered the DGA and WGA, 4%, 5%, 3.5% over the course of the contract. The AMPTP additionally touted that it suggested a 76% increase in high-budget SVOD foreign residuals for the 4 largest streaming services, which suggests that the group offered SAG-AFTRA the foreign residuals formula that the DGA and WGA received in their contract negotiations. On the topic of AI regulations, the AMPTP said it proposed getting consent from performers and background actors to create and use digital replicas, with performers needing to provide written consent and be furnished with a description of the replica's intended use. Additionally, no digital alterations that would change the nature of an actor's performance would be able to be implemented without obtaining the performer's consent, and digital replicas would not be able to be reused without consent and compensation. This actually sounds pretty reasonable. A lot of this actually sounds pretty damn reasonable, I'm not going to lie. What do you think, guys?
Don't everybody go at once.
I know, fucking hell, come on, Jesus. This leaf or something? Christ. I know Andre's had to step out, but God, come on.
I agree that the studio should say that we don't, what Tom was saying, like, we don't need you guys. And I mean, I really just don't even care about all these Hollywood actors or writers. I wouldn't have cared if the writer's strike went on indefinitely and this stupid actor's strike, and they ended up just going another route and hiring independently or getting out of or doing something else, like going over. I know a lot of studios and stuff were going over to the UK, using people over there. A lot of people were pulling stuff from Korea and Japan as far as writing, and just basically getting around it. And I was hoping they were going to keep going down that route. But I mean, they already made a deal with the writers. I'm guessing that sooner or later the actors will probably accept some BS deal as well and kick the can down the road for another 3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I will say it this way, because I agree with you, Nick. I think that and I've said it multiple times on various streams, including this very one, your favorite podcast. The writers are idiots. It was the worst deal they ever could have signed. They are going to be sitting on a worse contract 3 years from now, after, as Nate already said, losing 1/3 to 2/3 of the writers that are currently working or were currently working, and it's only going to be worse the next time around. The amount of production that used to happen will not. You're going to see a dearth of content because they just aren't going to make it. So you're not going to see 900 films a year released into the theaters like they were doing fairly consistently in 2018, 2019. You're not going to see 1,100 television programs produced in the English language, next year. You're not going to see those numbers. You're going to see greatly reduced numbers of all of these things, especially new stuff. And everybody's going to do what Disney's doing, which we've already talked about with the Marvel thing. Everybody's going back to a traditional TV model, because doing everything at once and giving series deals is a terrible idea. And they just finally arrived at the conclusion that all of us here on this panel at some point or another said, don't do that. It's stupid. Okay, now back to the actor side of the equation. Actors are boned. They're boned. Right now, Hollywood is still sitting on a year worth of content. Outside of the people that have network deals that are going to go to work at the networks here in the States and around the globe that have that are American actors that have those deals, or even other parts of other unions, they still can go to work. It's the actors that are outside of those that can't. And they're going to get more desperate than they are now. And I've heard all the talking points. Well, we're used to being starving actors. We're used to being waiters and waitresses. And I'm like, okay, well, try doing that for another year and then have a conversation with me. But they're gonna get probably close to the 150 days that they could actually go over what at 150 days they would be over what the writer strike was, because I think that was 148 days. So I anticipate they're going to have to take a worse deal, and then they're going to be sitting in the same position 3 years from now, just like the writers. You know, they're going to the studios are going to force the issue. They really are.
Well, I think this deal is pretty good. You think this is bad? I think this is pretty decent.
I think.
I mean, you got to think what they're looking at here, right? Is not the problem. The problem with actors and also the writers, but mainly with the actors, is that they get significant kickback initially, right? The big ones do, and so the studio will be looking at the top earners and going, "Well, why the fuck do you deserve more?" Although, and what it is it's the top earners going to be damaging the deal for the lower day earners. But the lower day earners have actually been given a pretty good deal here in terms of the residuals and stuff like that. I don't think the studios want to give even more money to the top earners of, where they get like 26 million a movie. The studios are like, no, that's insane. Because it's a blanket deal for everyone. It has to be for all union members, right? They can't go in and go, well, yeah, but actually, no, unless you're this percentage rate, etc., etc. So, although it's good, this deal is pretty good. I mean, it's reasonable across the board, the percentages and the residual kickbacks as well. But I think they have to be a bit harsher on this than they do the WGA. They can't give. I just think there's a difference between the two of them.
I'm going to say it this way: if they give concessions on likeness, there's going to be a problem for them down the road. Same with background actors, extras, whatever. I would never include that. In fact, I would put that in the contract that they can never use that, because they want you to sign away your likeness. They are going to try to convince people to do it. I think they have to
already been doing it.
Keep that out of the contract, Nate. I think that
that's the thing is they should be, both the writers and the actors should be getting together and lobbying the government to actually start to regulate AI, right? It, like they kind of did already, say that nothing you use as far as writing or whatever can be copyrighted, right? Well, that's just it though. But in that case, then there's no incentive for Hollywood to use it if they can't copyright it, right? Plain and simple. If you use AI in your movie, then whatever you used in AI can be used by anybody else at that point. And if you make laws kind of like that, like it's an open source thing, like, you can't copyright it, you can't go after anybody who uses the same footage or the same images or whatever, then there's no incentive for Hollywood to use it at that point. As far as the actors go, I'll say it again, like I've said it a million fucking times before, basically that they're just like athletes. You get to do what kids dream of doing, and there's 10,000 people waiting outside that door lined up to take your fucking job. Okay, now granted, not everybody is a James or I was just about to say James Gunn for some dumb reason. Chris Pratt, I meant. So I was thinking of Guardians of the Galaxy. Not everybody is somebody like that. I get it. You're going to have those actors, but when you're not that actor and you're a working actor, you just have to be glad that you're working. I've said it before. 90% of the actors or more working technically don't make a living. That's just the way it is. It's not a type of job where, unless you're at a level where you're on a TV show,
meritocracy.
Yeah, I mean, it takes talent, right? It's just no different than writing, and I think that's where Hollywood's come across. And
well, it's not just that it takes talent; it takes a minimum of talent. But really, what it takes is charisma, and it takes having the right connections and the right representation. There's tons of actors who are super talented but starving.
I was going to get to another point here, though, and that is that the studios have done this to themselves in a way too. So they're not totally like innocent in this thing. It's a 50-50 thing, right? The studios have relied on these superhero movies and other things, and that has killed the movie star, right? So an actor cannot become a movie star anymore, really. The rare one gets through the cracks, but they don't have star vehicles anymore. It used to be you'd have, all these movies ideas that are out there that are original ideas, and they would try to find an actor or actress that would go well with it, and that's what sold the picture. Now they've relied too much on the IPs and the franchise, and that's where Tarantino and Scorsese are coming from. and they've all made each other obsolete in that point. The writers are bad. The shit that's coming out is bad. The studios are making these bad decisions. At the end of the day, they all deserve what they're getting, and none of them deserve to get anything as far as being rewarded at this point until they all can be better. And Andre's right. Of course, you can't necessarily make a movie star, but what you can do is set them up to succeed. And what Hollywood hasn't done anymore is allowed anybody to break through as a movie star. Chris Pratt is like one of the last ones I can think of, and it was more like just despite the fact that, you know, Hollywood doesn't create movie stars. Otherwise, you have to go back to your Will Smith, Ryan Reynolds. Beyond that, all your quote unquote movie stars, anybody could open a movie on their own without it being some kind of sequel. You got to go back way, way back because there's nobody anymore.
Well, it's the same with directors, though. It's that risk taking that they don't want to do. They want pre-packaged, manufactured stars and directors, etc.